Hello, fourth graders. Today we're going to start lesson 4 of our chapter, continuing on the West, but this lesson is going to be more focused on how do natural resources drive the economy of the West. In this lesson, you're going to be learning about the West natural resources and their impact on the economy of the United States. You're going to see how their natural resources can help of the US and how it helps the US grow as well as do business. And then you're going to be talking about how the West's natural resources help not just the region, but the United States overall in other ways. You're also going to be talking about deforestation, natural features of the West, how tourism is a large part of the economy, how the role of the Pacific Ocean and is the role of the Pacific Ocean in the West, as well as writing about which natural resources are important and using evidence to prove it, talking about the agriculture of the West. So let's get started. Here we have a photo of Death Valley located in the West. It's the hottest and driest place in North America. This is located in California. So first thing we're going to inspect. So you're going to be looking at the photo or the inspect portion, and it wants you to recall by looking at the heading right here and the photo, which what do you already know about the mountains in the West? So here we have the Cascade Range, mountain range right here, and the heading we have as Mountains and Majesty. If you know the national anthem, then that is part of the songs. Then you're going to be underlining the states where the mountains are located and highlighting the definition of a rain shadow. The West, mountains and majesty. The Rocky Mountains are one of the West's best well-known features. This chain of tall, rugged mountains extends from the south of Alaska into the continental United States for more than 3,000 miles. It varies in width from 70 to 300 miles. The Rockies help create short summers and long cold winters in Alaska. High elevations make for sudden strong storms and deep snowpacks. Two other north-south ranges are located west of the Rocky Mountains. The Cascades are mainly in Washington and Oregon. The Sierra Nevada mountains run through northern and central California. These ranges cut off the cool, wet air that comes from the Pacific. Rain and snow mainly fall on the western side of these mountains. The eastern sides are drier and warmer because there is little moisture remaining in the air. This phenomenon is known as a rain shadow. So if you are annotating, then we already have our definition here. The Great Basin is a low-lying area of land, lies between the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades. The land here is arid or very dry, and there are few plants. Looking at this primary source, in their words, Isabella Bird, the Rocky Mountains realize, nay, exceed the dream of my childhood. It is magnificent and the air is life-giving. Isabella Bird was a traveler who lived during 1873. And if you are going through these two parts, we have the summarize. How do the mountains impact the West? And you're going to be underlining the length and width of the Rocky Mountains. And then looking at the photo, where do you think the wetter areas of land are going to be? Where are the arid regions and how do you know? Using all of your text features, using your resources, you're going to be finding those answers. Now we're going to go over your exploring cause and effect. We've talked about cause and effect before. The effect is what happened, the cause is why it happened. To find the cause and effect, first you have to read the text from beginning to end. Anytime you have a piece of information, go over it from the start to the ending in order to make sure that you understand all of the details. The second thing you need to do is reread the text and look for ideas that tell you what happened. What occurred because of something else? The result is the effect, which is what you're looking for. Then you have to reread the text and look for details that tell you why it happened. We're not just looking for what happened, we need to understand why it occurred. What occurred that led to this effect? This is the cause. The fourth thing you need to do is ask yourself, what is the relationship? So what is the connection between the cause and the effect? How did one event lead to the other? So an example of a cause and effect is that we know that the Sierra Nevada cut off the cool wet air that blows in from the Pacific Ocean. And we know that because the Sierra Nevada cuts that off, the land after that is dry and arid. We saw that inside of our text. The eastern sides are drier and warmer because there's little moisture in the air. And this is called a rain cloud, rain shadow. The eastern sides of the mountain are drier and warmer because of the little moisture remaining. And we already saw that it's called a rain shadow. Now we're going to be going over your textbook pages 332 to 341, and we're going to be looking for causes, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 effects. So we need things that one thing cause the other thing to happen. They need to be interconnected. So go ahead and flip over to your textbook pages. We're on page 332. How do natural resources drive the economy of the West? Deserts, oceans, plains, volcanoes. The West has all these features and more. Such different landscapes also have different natural resources. Volcanoes of Hawaii, Alaska, Washington, and California deposited rich ash onto the soil, making it fertile. California's Central Valley produces more than half of the country's vegetables and fruits. Metals, such as gold and silver, have drawn prospectors to Alaska, Nevada, and Colorado. Spectacular scenery brings visitors to the West National Parks, including Yellowstone and Yosemite. Tall waterfalls, colorful canyons, majestic mountains, and lush forests have been protected for public use. The fertile land from California to Oregon allows for growing lettuce, lemons, almonds, tomatoes, olives, and apples. All of these crops contribute greatly to the economy of the West. Arid and semi-arid lands used to graze horses, cattle, and sheep are in places in the West such as Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, and Utah. However, the dry conditions bring dangers. Wildfires can sweep through the United States. Some plants have developed fireproof roots or seeds that only crack open under extreme heat in order to survive during and after the fires. So we already know that because of the dry lands, it can cause fires, but also because of the semi-arid lands, we can feed horses and cattle. Over here, we have another cause and effect, which is that the volcanoes of Hawaii, Alaska, Washington, and California deposited rich ash to the soil, and the effect would be that it made it fertile. All of these are reasons that you could list for your causes and your effects. Because there's a lot of metals such as gold and silver, it has brought people to mine them in Alaska, Nevada, and Colorado. Even for growing different fruits and vegetables in California and Oregon, because of the fertile land, we have the ability to grow lettuce, lemons, almonds, tomatoes, olives, and apples. All of these things, one of them causes the other. If you wanted to look at this one even, you could say that for scenery brings visitors or tourists into the states. So if you wanted to talk about how Yellowstone and Yosemite are huge waterfalls or locations or parks that cause people to come and boost the economy. Here we have a photo of massive sequoia trees in California that attract visitors. So tourists would come to see this huge national forest and how huge the trees are. Now we're on page 334, forests in the West. Forests cover much of the West. In the late 1800s, loggers moved into the Pacific Northwest. Early logging companies had cut down whole areas of trees. This practice is called deforestation. The companies realized if they cut down all the trees, there would be no forest left. So they began to only cut down certain trees and to plant trees to replace those that they had cut down. This kept the soil from eroding or being lost due to wind and rain. It also helped the wildlife. Early on, in I think it was the previous lesson, we talked about the Dust Bowl and how the Dust Bowl was caused by lots of erosion due to nothing holding down the dirt and a drought, which would have dried off the layer of soil, which then made it easier for wind to blow the dirt off of the ground and then turned into dust storms. This is another important reason why deforestation is very dangerous and it can end up harming the environment and the people that live in it. Redwoods and sequoias. Giant redwoods are native only to the coast of California. They are the tallest trees in the world. The tallest tree measures 379 feet tall. They can live for 2,000 years or more. The trees need water to grow and survive, but there is not much rain in the summer. Instead, the redwoods absorb moisture from dense fog. Their roots also trap moisture in the soil. Sequoias are the largest trees by volume. They are native to the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada. And down here, we have um, an image to show us exactly how tall giant sequoias can go. Or giant, yes. So here we have the Empire State Building, which is 305 feet tall, and a giant sequoia, which can get up to 379 feet. This is what the 6-foot person would look like, a 25-foot house, and then a blue oak in comparison to everything else. Temperate and tropical rainforests. Two types of rainforests exist in the West. Tropical rainforests can be found in hot, wet areas like Hawaii. Temperate rainforests exist in places that are not too hot or too cold. California and the Pacific Northwest include parts of Alaska, make up the temperate rainforest region. Other temperate rainforests are located around the world. So here we have one of them. We can tell that it's the temperate rainforest because we're looking down at the key or the legend, and it tells us exactly which parts are which. So here we have one on the West Coast. We have some in Europe, some in Southeastern Asia, and one definitely down here with New Zealand, and bits in Australia. And now we have the national parks of the West. In 1872, Congress authorized the first national park, Yellowstone. The park was to provide the benefit and enjoyment of the people. Today, 59 national parks exist in the United States, many of which are in the West. These parks bring visitors and millions of tourism dollars to local businesses. The most unique feature of the West are preserved through national parks. So here are some of them. If you have a star on the map, it's a national park. If it is dotted or a line, then it is a national boundary, and then state boundary would be the dotted one. So we have one here. We have a few. We have Joshua Tree, which is close to us. We have Death Valley, Sequoia National Forest, Kings Canyon. Here is the Great Basin, Bryce Canyon. So all of these are located in the West. And then if you look at Alaska, they have a bunch. And then Hawaii has at least 2. Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming features beautiful mountains, glaciers, lakes, and rivers. Visitors come to see abundant wildlife like elk, pronghorns, and bald eagles. Denali National Park in Alaska, this image down here, offers views of the Aurora Borealis, or Northern Lights, during the fall, winter, and early spring. Visitors can also enjoy Denali, the tallest mountain peak in Northern America. On this page, we have Crater Lake National Park in Oregon, which has the deepest lake in the United States. Visitors can take a boat to explore Wizard Island in the middle of the lake, right here. Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah is known for its unusual rock formations called hoodoos. Visitors can enjoy hiking through colorful trails. And then in Hawaii, Volcanoes National Park in Hawaii is home to Kilauea and Mauna Loa, 2 of the most active volcanoes on Earth. In some areas, visitors can walk carefully among lava flows. We're going to continue to page 338, where we have visiting the West. All types of attractions in the West bring visitors to the region. The economies of the states in the West benefit from tourism. Natural destinations. National parks are a great reason to visit the West. Other areas offer natural beauty too. People can visit beaches, forests, and wildlife refuges to observe animals, to hike, and to boat. National monuments protect historical and cultural locations. Wilderness areas keep the conservation areas keep wildlands and waterways protected. People enjoy the national beauty of the West year round. People and beautiful ocean scenery exist along the shoreline in the West. So here we have a beach that has been protected. And here we have a primary source in their own words by John Muir. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home, that wildness is a necessity, and that mountain parks and reservations are useful not only as a fountain of timber and irrigating rivers, but as a fountain of life. Here we have history and heritage. The West has many important historical sites, such as Fort Clatsop near Astoria, Oregon, where Lewis and Clark spent the winter of 1805 to 1806. The Nez Perce National Historical Park has 38 sites spread across 4 states, Idaho, Oregon, Montana, and Washington. It honors the history of the Nez Perce and preserves their secret sites and traditions. Visitors to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii can tour the USS Arizona Memorial. The site honors those lost during the attack in 1941. Museums are plentiful too. The USS Midway, an aircraft carrier docked in San Diego, welcomes visitors as a museum. The Getty Center in Los Angeles includes important art from ancient to modern times. The history of the West is celebrated in Cody, Wyoming at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. Big city sites. Cities in the West are interesting too. Salt Lake City's Tabernacle is a sacred spot for the Mormon religion. The Golden Gate Bridge is a famous landmark in San Francisco. Seattle's wharves are known for fresh seafood. Boise has outdoor activities in parks, gardens, and on the Boise River Greenbelt. Denver's elevation makes it the mile-high city. We're on page 340. The Pacific Ocean. The long coastline of the Pacific Ocean affects the climate of the West. In Southern California, this means mild, steady temperatures year-round. Moisture in the air drives up humidity. Evenings often bring fog. West-blowing winds bring some storms that fall through spring, but rainfall is sparse. The Pacific coast from Northern California to Washington is colder and receives more than the southern areas. The ocean's temperature is colder there, and fog is common. Farther north, the coast of the Gulf of Alaska is exposed to most of the storms crossing the North Pacific. Coastal areas have moderate temperatures. In the Hawaiian Islands, the trade winds off the coast make for mild and consistent weather. The mild weather and extensive coastline are resources that help the economy by bringing tourists to the region. So that could be another cause and effect that you could list, that because of the mild temperatures, tourists will come. If the temperatures were not as predictable, it might cause people not to want to go there because it could be seen as dangerous. Here we have a photo of when the cold air from the Pacific comes in as the warm inland air rises, the fog occurs in the San Francisco Bay. This is the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. Water in the West. Agriculture is an important part of the economy in the West. The climate of California is perfect for growing many crops, such as lemons, almonds, tomatoes, and olives. The growing season is 9 months long. Some farmers can produce 2 harvests per year. Other areas in the West also produce crops. Idaho is famous for potatoes. Fields in eastern Oregon produce wheat and barley. Washington is known for its apples. Crops would not grow without water. Irrigation brings water into farmlands. Water is stored by erecting dams on rivers. Water flows from the lake created by a dam through canals to the fields where it is pumped onto farmland. Agriculture in California relies on consistent supply of water. Much of this water flows from the top of the state's mountains where it originally fell as rain or snow. An aqueduct runs about 444 miles from San Francisco to Anaheim. The California Aqueduct provides water for people to grow their crops as well as to wash their dishes and brush their teeth. And here we have images of the California Aqueduct, the world's largest means of transporting water. And up here we have an image of an irrigation system that brings water to drier places to help crops grow. This is the end of lesson 6.4 in your textbook. So let's go back to our workbook pages and answer page 280 and 281. We've gone through multiple causes and we've gone through lots of effects. So we're going to go ahead and move on to page 280. Here, I want you to write about it using the information you've gathered and similarities between the West. Similarities between states in the West. What do you think is the most important natural resource in the West and why? So this would be based on the information that you've read. Which resource do you think is most important using the all of the resources that you have? Here, we're talking about natural resources. So if you were to describe which resource did we talk about again and again and again, one of the options you could talk about were fertile land. Another one you could talk about was accessibility to water. Being able to access water allows for different crops to grow. If you wanted to talk about how trees or lumber, minerals even from different states, or if you were going to talk about land and how without it we wouldn't be able to grow food in the West, which is a big part of our economy. If you wanted to talk about natural resources like our national parks, that causes a lot of people to want to come to the West. So those are all different reasons that you can put, but you need to explain why. You can't just have a reason and then not complete it with explanation of why it's important. Make sure that you use complete sentences, and your need is handwriting for this. Now you need to write and cite evidence. What is the West's role in agriculture? Agriculture is farming, growing different crops, and then you're going to be using facts from your text to explain your response. If you wanted to talk about California, then you could talk about how California's agriculture allows it to grow fruits and vegetables. We saw a lot of vegetables and fruits that were grown within California. If you want to talk about Idaho and how it's famous for growing potatoes, or if you wanted to talk about Oregon and how it grows wheat and barley, or how apples are grown in Washington, those are all part of the West's role in agriculture. But you would need to explain how you know. So if you want to talk about California, is California, Oregon, and Washington all have a role in agriculture because you know that what do they grow? You would need to make it, you would need to read that information and then summarize it or reword it into your answer. Now, on page 281, you need to summarize, so kind of what you were doing here, but you need to summarize how do natural resources drive people to the West? We've talked about how the West has brought people for better jobs, for land, for safety, for multiple reasons. If you're just talking about natural resources only, we've talked about how good weather allows for the West to be a great tourist spot for people to visit. We've talked about how parts of the land that have a lot of volcanic ash have more nutrient-rich soil. So they have a better ability to grow different fruits and vegetables because the land is more fertile. If you talked about how the mountain ranges or the national parks, all of those are natural resources that could make people want to come to the West. So using that information, you could list 2 to 3 different kinds of natural resources that bring people west, and then you would have to explain how you know or what makes you say that. So I think that people may come to the West because of tourism, and the weather allows for it to be more safe here without having to worry about common natural disasters like storms or extreme weather. Those are all reasons that people might want to come to the West. If you wanted to talk about how land allows for farmland to be created for agricultural reasons, and people might come for jobs or for farming, that's another perfectly reasonable explanation too. So there's more than one way to answer this, but you need to explain your answer fully. For now, this is the end of lesson 4, chapter 6, lesson 4. In the next video, we're going to be talking about chapter 6, lesson 5. And until then, I will see you later.